Welcome to the Karl Marx Advisors Higher Education Discussion Series. Today we will be discussing the complexities of leading an institution of higher education. We are fortunate to have a distinguished panel of business executives that have all worked extensively in higher education. I am joined today by Tom Cunningham, the former VP of Finance and Administration at the College of New Rochelle.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
Next, we have Robin Dorff, who recently served as the Provost for Academic Affairs at Plymouth State University. Prior to that, he was the Dean of Humanities and Social Studies at Kennesaw State University. And he was, before that, the chair of the National Security and Strategy Development Department at the U.S. Army War College. Welcome, Robin.
Thanks, Steve, and great to be here.
And finally, we have John Farrell, the former director of the part-time MBA program at LaSalle University and the assistant dean for graduate programs at Rider University. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to join everyone today.
Let's get started. Robin, you've been involved with many schools and businesses during your illustrious career. How would you describe the complexities of leading a school to that of a business?
Well, fundamentally, it'd be facing all of the challenges of leadership in a business and more, combined, I would say, with a relative deficit of effective tools for dealing with them. For example, I think business leaders, for the most part, generally have the ability to hire, fire, recruit, retain, in alignment with things like mission, vision, and financial realities, and all of, I think, the traditional business things. Not so much in higher ed, and it's much more challenging because of that. I think the number and diversity of competing stakeholders and agendas, both internally and externally, play a huge role in that. Just think of the highly regulated environment that we operate in, largely but not exclusively external. That includes accreditors, federal and state agencies, political units and actors, and not to mention students, parents, alumni, donors, and generally. So the two other things I would add: how faculty see their roles. It's often less as institutional employees than as guardians of their disciplinary interests and values. Even the student-first focus of many of our faculty is infrequently, I think, grounded in a real understanding of the financial and other realities of the institution. So it's not necessarily the fault of the faculty. We've kind of been oriented to learn and internalize our roles and responsibilities that way. But frankly, having been on both sides, sometimes we as administrators want to share the kind of details of financial realities and so on until that possibility of a crisis looms, and usually or quite often that's too late. I'd quickly add one other thing, if I may, and that's just how we are organized in higher ed, with strategy generally emerging, not consultatively, but emerging from the interaction of relatively autonomous academic units, typically departments and colleges within the universities, with their own leadership, leaving overall institutional leadership scrambling to find kind of compromising strategic positions and options, resources, and methods to pursue overall strategy. So in the end, it's a very, very challenging environment, in part because the problems, the challenges of leadership and of running a business are pretty much the same. The tools that we have are often not the same, and the ones that look like they're the same are often much weaker or harder or more complicated to wield.
Great, thanks, Robin. John, in what areas do university leaders need to become more proficient to have a greater impact and to become, just in general, better leaders?
Just continuing on what Robin said, I think two key areas are strategic management, and corresponding to that is financial performance and financial management. This day and age, during these times, all education student operational decisions need to be looked at from both a strategic and financial point of view. The leadership in an institution needs to recognize that they have to get every single ounce of value out of every dollar spent. They need to adopt that return on investment, that financial management perspective that many in business always have. The other element is on the strategic side, and as Robin said, that there are different ways in which universities have historically dealt with strategies, but at this point in time, we're dealing with an integrative strategy for the institution. It's portfolio programs, it's portfolio of student services, and the like. And equally important is the speed at which decisions need to be made. There's no longer the time to study and analyze. That as we are going through this challenging time, decisions that are made on an operating basis provide the foundation for the strategies of the future, and understanding what changes need to be made in light of both today and saving money and delivering the right education environment for our students, as well as positioning for the future, is so important. University leadership is in a position right now, it's fairly unique. Everybody understands the challenges facing the school. They are in a position to make substantive and lasting changes. And with the operating changes come the strategic changes. And unfortunately, both have to be made pretty quickly in this environment. So focus on strategy and focus on financial performance, investment, and the allocation of resources to deliver the environment that the mission requires.
Clearly challenges that they're all coming up against during COVID. Next, Tom, how important is the budgeting process in the leadership roles and in being ready for anything that may come up at a university?
Well, I'd like to frame it that it's very important. And a couple of points that Robin and John touched on were the challenges that are facing schools today. Running a school as running a business is complex. And I think both John and Robin alluded to the fact that schools should run like a business and be able to make decisions. So the budgeting phase is important to that. One of the problems I've seen now in several schools is that they budget on a historical basis and they don't give a lot of thought to the fact that they are a business. They think of themselves as not-for-profit, meaning not-for-profit means I don't have to make money. What I think they fail to see, given the challenges today, is that you don't build your business or your budget on just a neutral basis. You have to have enough cash and liquidity to pay several things. You've got to maintain your facilities. You've got to pay your principal. You can't rely on pledges because pledges are not cash. You have capital spending, and grant income is not necessarily money that you would get in to run your operations. So all of those things, and there's others, there has to be a transparency that involves the president and faculty, the provost, in understanding the challenges that are facing the school and how to budget and plan ahead for them.
Great, thanks. Robin, you touched on this a little earlier, but there are a number of constituencies that the president has to interact with and change the direction of the school and help them improve. Can you discuss a little bit some of these challenges that they come up against in relation to maybe the approaching the zone of exigency or other things that they may encounter?
Sure, Stephen, happy to do that. I think to pick up on one of the points, keep in mind that I think to the business comparisons that we were drawing, and I think both John and Tom have highlighted those even more, the lack of ability to pivot very quickly in higher education is also one of those things. It's not necessarily easy in business, but what we're talking about, especially with the zone of exigency and in the COVID environment today, is that there are going to have to be some of those quick pivots, and they are very difficult, in part to your question to follow up, because of those varied and oftentimes even internally competing, but also externally competing interests that we have to deal with. So that change of direction gets very, very complicated. A couple of points. I would say, first of all, identify and work very closely with people in those constituencies. Too often leaders think that they have to do all of the leading, the framing, and everything else. But if you find the ones who are already inclined to go along with what you think the new vision and the new direction needs to be, work closely with them and bring them in. I say use them as somewhat like acolytes to be spokespeople to their colleagues. You'll get more, I think, effective leadership about getting leaders to lead others than for you, the leader, to try to do it all. At the other extreme, and I've seen a lot of this, is the overuse of task forces, special committees outside of regular committee structures, and an attempt to sort of engage everyone and at all in all capacities. And it's almost, I think, a danger of over communication rather than under communication. A leader's responsibility is really to help shape a vision, to articulate it in such a way that others agree, really want to go along with it. Also, as was mentioned, be effective in communicating the how severe or at least how important and crucial the situation is. You don't want to do gloom and doom, but unfortunately, to a point I made earlier, many faculty really do not understand the business of higher education. And I think in today's environment, we as leaders and faculty really need to understand that their responsibilities will include more and more awareness of those real needs. Otherwise, we're all going to struggle. And I think for those institutions with unionized faculty, and even those with not, working within a collective bargaining agreement, working with the staff and faculty handbooks, understand that if it's a serious enough situation, if you are approaching the zone of exigency, have those conversations and have them early, and engage again key leaders in those constituencies, because many times they can be the effective messengers, but you need to engage them early, you need to inform them honestly, and you really, really need to make sure that you are communicating in a trustful, believable, high integrity fashion. Those things I think are critical, and I would encourage anyone in those positions today to keep those in mind. And don't confuse communicating with strategy. Strategy needs effective communication, but just sending out more newsletters and emails and everything else is not really doing what you want to do in order to get to the strategic ends.
Well, that's great, guys. I really do appreciate it, Robin, John, and Tom, for your time and your insights. Clearly, as members of the Karl Marx Advisors Higher Education team, we are ready to assist any of the leadership in higher education as they go through the challenges that COVID has presented, helping them create a process and helping them communicate and work within all their stakeholders is what we do at Karl Marx in conjunction with the Higher Education Administration. So I thank you all for your time and look forward to our next conversations.